Okay, so picture this, right? It's January of 1700, and you're on the coast of Japan. Beautiful day, sun's out, sea's calm, everything's kind of moving along, and then suddenly, bam! This massive wall of water just slams into the shore. I'm talking like 16 feet high. Total chaos, right? But here's the thing. No earthquake, no warning, nothing. It's just this random, like, totally devastating wave. And that is basically the story of the Orphan Tsunami. And it was this huge mystery in Japan for centuries.
Yeah, it really was a puzzle for a long time. And you wouldn't believe it, but the answer to the mystery is all the way across the Pacific Ocean.
Right. Totally different side of the world. So how did that even work?
Well, it's kind of a tale of two sides of the Pacific. We've got all these incredible, really meticulously kept records from Japan right from that period, the Tokugawa period, or you might have heard it called the Edo period.
Right. Yeah, I've heard it both ways.
Exactly. But alongside those records, we also have these oral histories that have been passed down for generations by Native American tribes. And they're from the Cascadia region, which stretches like all the way from Northern California to Alaska. So we have these two sources, thousands of miles apart, and together they help us understand this massive event.
It really makes you think, like two completely different cultures both hold these pieces of this huge natural disaster.
It's pretty amazing.
So, okay, Japan, 1700, Tokugawa period. What's important about that?
Well, the Tokugawa period is super interesting for a few reasons, but for us, for this story, it's all about the records. See, back then, literacy rates in Japan were really high for the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, keeping records was like almost an art form. And luckily for us, centuries later, that means we have all these firsthand accounts of the tsunami. Like we hear directly from officials, from merchants, even from village leaders. They describe the impact in incredible detail.
So this isn't just like, dry statistics.
Oh, no. This is real, like you're there kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
For example, there's this one record from a village headman. And get this, there was no earthquake, right? But he had this feeling, like a gut feeling, that something was wrong.
Oh.
So he decided to evacuate all the elderly residents and the children. He had them go up to a hilltop shrine.
Smart guy.
Yeah, super smart. And, because of that, he probably saved a lot of lives.
That's intense.
It is. And there are others, too. Like, we hear about these huge cargo ships. One of them was carrying 28 tons of rice. It was just lost at sea.
Just gone. Wow.
Yeah. Whole villages just wiped out, because of the flooding. And then on top of that, all the fires that started after. It's really powerful stuff.
It must have been terrifying. And you said that they knew that earthquakes and tsunamis were linked, right?
Yeah, they understood that connection.
So this must have been even more confusing, even scarier.
Absolutely. It defied all logic for them. It's why they called it the Orphan Tsunami, because it was like this tsunami without apparent earthquake. And that's what made it such a mystery. So for centuries, it remained a mystery. How could a tsunami just appear out of nowhere? But then, starting in like the 1980s, things started to change. Scientists started to, they started to find some really interesting evidence.
Okay, what kind of evidence? Like, how do you even start to look for clues about a tsunami from hundreds of years ago?
Well, it's kind of like being a detective, right? You look for clues, you follow the evidence, and one of the biggest clues for this case, ghost forests.
Ghost forests? What are those?
Okay, so imagine you're walking along the coast and you come across this forest of dead trees just standing there,
I use the word.
All these silent sentinels. Kind of eerie, really.
Yeah, a little bit.
But those are ghost forests, and they form because, the land along the Cascadia coast, it dropped during a massive earthquake. Yeah, and that caused these whole areas to be suddenly submerged underwater. It basically killed all the trees.
Makes sense. But I thought you said scientists didn't think Cascadia had those kinds of earthquakes.
Right. For a long time, the thinking was that the ghost forests were caused by gradually rising sea levels, a slow process.
Okay.
But then they started digging a little deeper, literally and figuratively.
I see.
And they found evidence that pointed to something way more dramatic.
Like what kind of evidence are we talking about?
Well, think of a tsunami like a giant hand, right? It sweeps across the land and leaves these fingerprints behind. And those fingerprints, they're in the form of layers of silt and sediment. Stuff that only a powerful tsunami could have deposited.
So they're literally finding the tsunami's fingerprints.
Exactly. They also found whole marshes that were buried under layers of sand and sediment. And that really tells you that something sudden and violent happened.
It's crazy how nature holds all these secrets, right? Like clues to the past are just waiting to be discovered.
It is amazing, isn't it? And in this case, all the evidence was pointing to an earthquake way more powerful than anyone had imagined.
So they knew it was big.
Hmm.
But how did they figure out exactly when it happened?
Well, there's this amazing scientific tool called radiocarbon dating.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
It lets scientists analyze things like, the rings of trees. So they looked at the rings of the trees in the ghost forests, and they were able to determine that this earthquake happened sometime between, let me see, I think it was 1695 and 1720.
So it lines up perfectly with those Japanese records of the Orphan Tsunami.
Right. But they still needed that definitive connection.
How did they get that?
Well, in 1996, Japanese researchers, they got really meticulous. They took the date of their Orphan Tsunami and they compared it with the time frame for the Cascadia earthquake. And guess what? Perfect match.
No way!
Yeah. The Orphan Tsunami finally found its parent almost 300 years later.
That's incredible. It's like a real-life detective story.
It really is. And you know what? This wasn't just like a historical curiosity. This discovery actually had huge implications for people living in the Pacific Northwest today.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, up until that point, you see, all the building codes, the infrastructure, it was designed to withstand earthquakes up to magnitude 7.
Right.
But this new understanding of the Cascadia subduction zone, it meant they had to be ready for something way bigger,
Like how much bigger?
potentially magnitude 9.
Whoa! Okay, that is a huge E difference.
It changes everything. So yeah, solving this historical mystery, it might have actually saved lives because it meant they could update building codes and emergency plans.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
It is. And it also makes you think about how important it is to connect those seemingly unrelated pieces of information, right?
Well,
For so long, those Japanese records and those Native American stories, they were like in completely separate worlds. But it wasn't until scientists brought them together, along with the geological evidence, that the whole picture became clear.
and that's really what I love about these deep dives. It's like you start with these separate things, and then you realize they're all connected in these amazing ways.
Exactly. And it also highlights how important it is to respect traditional knowledge. For a long time, oral histories were dismissed as like unreliable or unscientific.
All right.
But in this case, they were absolutely crucial.
It's like every culture has its own way of knowing and understanding the world, and we need to be open to all of it.
Absolutely. And that's what we've been exploring today, right? The power of different perspectives, the importance of bringing different fields together.
Yeah, that's been fascinating.
And this episode, it really leaves us with some questions to think about. Like, how much history is still out there, just waiting to be discovered? What other mysteries could we solve by connecting different kinds of knowledge, like written records and those oral traditions?
Yeah.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, wow, all this is from a tsunami that happened over 300 years ago.
Right. It's not just like an ancient history story.
Yeah.
It actually changed how we understand things today, even building codes.
Absolutely. The past can really inform the present, and the future. By understanding what happened then, we can better prepare for what might happen down the line.
And I bet scientists are like looking at all sorts of other historical events now with this in mind. Like, what other connections are we missing?
Oh, totally. This whole thing, it really reignited interest in interdisciplinary research, bringing together all these different fields of study.
Yeah. Because sometimes the answer isn't in just one field, right? It's like you got to look at the whole picture.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's bring it back to like us, the listeners. Why should we care about this? It was a long time ago.
That's a fair question. I think there are a few big things we can all take away from this story. And the first one is be curious. Like, question what you think you know. Be open to new information.
That's good advice. It's easy to like get stuck in your ways, right?
Yeah.
But there's always something new to learn.
Totally. And the story is a perfect example of that. The second takeaway, I think, is to remember that connections can be in the most unexpected places. Like sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from seeing patterns that no one else noticed.
Yeah. It's like those magic eye posters. Remember those?
Yeah.
You got to kind of blur your vision to see the 3D image.
Exactly. And the last thing I'd say is don't dismiss different ways of knowing. Like those oral histories from the Native American tribes, they were crucial here.
And for a long time, people didn't take them seriously.
Right. So it's a good reminder that knowledge can come from anywhere, and we should be open to learning from everyone.
It makes you wonder, like, what if someone listening right now makes the next big discovery just by, like, thinking differently or remembering something their grandparents told them.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would.
Because that's the beauty of knowledge, right? It's this journey, and it never really ends. There's always something new to discover. So keep asking questions, keep learning, and, keep diving deep.
I love that. And if you enjoyed this deep dive with us, don't forget to subscribe to the deep dive. We've got tons more explorations coming up. We'll see you next time.